Welcome back, amazing people, and today we're going to be talking building a rock stroke heavy metal preset, patch, tone, whatever you want to call it, in the Fender Tone Master Pro. We're going to have some fun doing this one. A lot of the videos of late have been about making songs and tracks, but this one is just about playing a bit of guitar. Okay, so we're going to start off straight as we mean to go on. So we've got the Tone Master Pro just here, our trusty friend. If you're using an amp sim or an actual amp, the same stuff will follow. It's just this is in the hardware modeler digital realm, or be it emulation or software or whatever on your screen, but the same kind of stuff will follow. So first of all, I've got the Tone Master Pro open, its interface open on my PC at the minute. I've also got it here on me on the desk. So what I'm going to do before I start is I'm going to make this a new name. So I'm going to put just something so we can capture it, because as we're going through this, we might forget to do this and overwrite something later on. That's really important. So new tone. Put March 26. That's enough for me because I would have made some songs against this. Hopefully, if it's any good. And what we'll do is I'll just be able to recall that. So I put notes on my album stuff or whatever. So what important on the Tone Master Pro? Look, where's the next empty slot? If you do that and overwrite an old patch, you're going to lose it. So I'm looking at the next empty patch. 141 is indeed empty. That's my current one, 145. So 141 it is. Save. Right. So 141 is a new tone. Okay, that's the first step. That's really important. So on from the last video, we mentioned a few of the things that can help, not necessarily tone, but the gain stage and stuff in general. So I've got nothing on at the minute. So this is the guitar. So I can see in my interface that is clipping. You can probably hear that. So what I'm going to do is turn mine down a tad so we don't get any of that. Still there. Knock it down a bit more. So we'll adjust that a bit as it comes through the Tone Master Pro, because there's no settings and stuff on here. Once you put it through an amp, it's going to compress it. It's going to squish the dynamic range down a bit. But you can see that's still somewhat clipping there, which is a bit odd, but well, we'll carry on. So first thing is first, we're going to pick an amp. I'm going to go for something nice and easy. So we're going for a rock metal tone preset here. So we're going to go for a half stack, which is basically the head and a cabinet already with it. So I've got plenty on the back end of this. So the Mezza Boogie, the Uber Shawl, the double rec there, the petrol, which is my current favourite, which is the diesel. I've not done an orange one yet, so that's interesting. All these are around about the same sort of tone voicings though. So what I'm going to do, I want to go for a JCM 800 kind of sound. So let's just pick that and see how that sounds out of the box. Okay. So really quiet. So what I'm going to do is go to a few things. So firstly, the preset settings. So the level, preset level's at 53. Let's leave that as it is. Let's go to the mixer and make sure if I do any adjustments, it doesn't ruin the tone or clip. So that's quite quiet at the minute. My interface is no longer clipping as it was before, which is a good sign. Right, so let's go back to this. So we can start messing around with this because there's nothing untoward at the minute. Preset settings, fine, 53. Seems a bit quiet, but we're going to do some messing around with this in a bit. Alright, so we've got that. Let's go to, firstly, if you're looking at changing the tone of your patch, preset, whatever, I don't even touch the amp to start with. Someone who's gone through the trouble that probably knows more about guitars and amps than you and I do, certainly more than I do, and I'm happy to admit that I just want to make cool music that makes me happy and inspires and keeps my creative rhythm going. So with regards to this, it's set generally in a position that sounds pretty good, and you know, it sounds alright, doesn't it? So if we do something like we might, a riff. Okay, thereabouts. Sounds alright, doesn't it? It's still a bit quiet and stuff because we need to do some nudging and preset tweaking, but it sounds a bit, to me in the room, I'm going to crank that up in the room for me a bit. Sounds a bit too casual for me, so I'm going to go to the cabinet, and what I'm going to do is look at changing the microphone. So microphone itself is the bit that picks up the tone, obviously, and the speaker is the tone. Okay, so there's two crucial parts here. So I'm not even going to touch the amp because all amps sound pretty much the same to a degree. I would give a shout out to Glenn Fricker if anyone follows. There's a lot of truth in what he says. I've been in electrical engineering for a long part of my life, and audio circuits was a big part of that when I was doing communications in aircraft, for example. So I've done the theory and the rest of it, and I completely agree with Glenn's approach and the science behind it. So what I want to do is make this tone sound a bit more less MIDI, but I like the fact that the mid character's there, but it just seems a bit too casual, a bit not enough grunt, not enough bite. So if you try moving the microphone, so let's go further back, closer towards it, so we get more bass and a bit more tightness. Right, okay, so let's start with a riff that we're going to keep using to consistently monitor throughout this video. So I'll do this little chugger. We put that back to where it was. Okay, that's from the cap edge. I'm going to go to the cap right in the front, see if that's any different. That sounds a bit warmer and a bit tighter. So the SM57, everyone tends to use that, and I tend to use something else. One of the quickest ways of changing your tone again is a speaker cab or the microphone. So I'm going to choose a different microphone. And that's one. So this is an SM7B. Here, hopefully that comes through, doesn't break your ears. So that's what I've just put on it. Okay, let's go back to the cab. Let's see if we can look at the microphones again. So just on the SM7B. Try the edge of the cone. That's got a bit more what I like, but we could probably EQ something useful out. Let's go a bit further back. So let's see what it sounds like way further back. There's a bit more air in there, but then we're losing some of that bass. So somewhere around the around here was good, but again, I'm still not getting what I want. Let's go back to here. I think this is probably where the best was. It sounds a bit gritty and a bit spiky. That's alright. Okay, but I don't think I'm getting what I need. So what we'll do, if you don't get the sound you want, don't mess around with the amp forever. Because it's the speaker cab, it's ultimately going to give you most of the tone. So if I'm going to change the speaker cab, so let's go for this little sucker and let's replace it with someone else. So let's go for a cabinet. I'm going to choose something a bit more modern. Whilst that's a JCM 100, there's plenty of bands that use them, and yeah, no doubt they are absolute beasts. It's not what I'm after. I'm going to go for something a bit more, not a Mezza, but a diesel cab. Engel and diesel cabs, I'm a big fan of them. V30s again, but this should sound... Okay, so straight away you can see what happens in Tone Master Pro. If I change the cab, it's broken up the fact that I used a half stack. So I'm going to put in the JCM 800 again. So I'm just going to go for the amp head and put that one back in. Let's find that little sucker. There she is. Keep going. British 800. Okay, confirm. Okay, so we're back in. That's quite quiet. So that other one was on a preset of a half cab. Yeah, that was a lot. I think it was on like 40 or 50 or something, wasn't it? So let's bring that up. About 40 or something, see if we're about the same sort of level. A bit more maybe, for about 45-ish. Okay, so we've got a new cab there, that's good. So let's go into it and have a look at what we can do. Let's put it back to the cab because I like that. A bit further back, see if that's any better. Versus there. So that's too nasally there. I want a bit of space. I think somewhere there maybe a half an inch back. A bit more. I think the inch is good. That's good. So it's got a nice blend of the bass, but also a bit of space and air movement between it. So if you look at this, this goes up to 6 inches. So that's only an inch away theoretically from your speaker cab. So you're talking, an inch, you know, a little bit away from the speaker cab and 6 inches more or less. So it's not a big difference, but it makes a huge difference to your tone. But again, what I'm going to do is change the mic out because I'm not happy with that particular microphone either. So I'll put it back to the SM7B again, which is this one here in the room. Change it back to the old SM57 that everyone else uses. Remember the difference to that, okay? No, there's a bit of fizz in that I don't like. That's gone straight away, that fizz. I can hear it's gone. Okay, I like that. So we've got somewhat of a bass tone here. So I'm spending quite a bit of time on the mic and cabs here, and that is deliberate because this is the bass tone. This isn't the finished tone, but you've got to start with a good foundation. And like a lot of people say, you can't polish a turd, you can't fix it in the mix, and all that kind of stuff. This isn't what I want yet. So we've got a tone that was probably nothing like what I wanted at the start, and now you can probably imagine. Drums or something, bit of Megadeth going on there, that kind of thing. And I don't know what amps they use. Maybe JCM, I don't know. Right, so what I'm going to do is boost it a bit. I'm going to give a bit more front end kick to this. So we've not even looked at the amp settings yet, and I don't want to because they're probably fine where they are. So if we go to effects, stomp boxes, what I'm going to do is the old booster. There's plenty of these available. You can see there's a massive list there. They're all pretty much the same thing, but we know a lot of us that use the hardware versions of these stomp boxes, the Tone Master Pro's version of the Tube Screamer. It's a familiar sound and we can tweak it. That's the only reason I'm using it. So I'm going to put it on one of my presets. I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll turn it on and off. So we'll turn the Tone Master Pro version of the stomp box off, which is the Tube Screamer. So let's play this riff again. Got used to that. Let's try this. Let's turn it off. Listen to the difference. So those higher notes there, they tend to sound a lot better as well. Okay, so that's really starting to kick a bit. Starting to have a bit of kick, so once it starts doing some, you know, typical metalcore type stuff. Take the pedal off and do the same sort of thing. Pretty weak, and then put it back in. Sounds loads better in my opinion. So what have we got? Leveled max, tone there, blend all the way in, drive, not the drive up a tad. A lot of people minimise that, but I'm going to knock it up a little. Bit of nostalgia there. Right, so now I'm going to put a noise gate in. I'm going to crank this a bit in the room so I can hear it more. Yeah, so you might be able to hear there's a bit of noise there, bit of crackling. So any cable here will act like an antenna, no matter how good your cables are, no matter how good your ground in your house, and that is when you start increasing the gain. So it's basically going to amplify whatever's in the signal chain. You are going to start to get some noise coming through. So I'm going to go straight to this trusty one, the metal gate, so I can hear that coming through. Straight to the metal gate. Put that in. I remember back in the day when I was using amps in the room, I used to get like radio signals coming through. So you should be hearing nothing as soon as I turn it off. There's a bit of hiss there, and then in my hands. Hands are moving. You can't see that. You can't hear a thing. So when you're doing any stuff recording-wise, you're going to want the fact that there's some silence in between, and you don't hear all the scraping. So turn it back off. You can hear everything. All right. Okay, so the only time I might adjust the threshold on that is if it's a bit too much. So. tighten that up too much, there, it'll sound really stiff. So try that again. It's not too bad, but it's cutting off some of the last edges of the notes all the way in, like that. Now try and play. So you can obliterate your way through it by playing outrageously hard. We want it somewhere where it knocks it off, but it doesn't interfere with your playing. So I can't hear any noise. That's pretty good for me. Knock it up a tad. There we go. Right, it's off. Noise. Gone. Cool. Right. So we're finally going to move on to the amplifier. Okay. So this is going to be. So I'm going to walk around the room a bit when I'm doing this. So I've got the mic in the cab, and that's going to generally pick up the flavour and palette of sounds that I'm after. So now, what I want to do is start adjusting the amplifier in the room as you would. You might have a friend in the room when you're doing this in the real ones, or you stand next to it. But the thing is, if you stand right next to the speaker, you're going to hear the direct focus sound out the speaker. Whilst I'm using a model and it's coming out of monitors, the same kind of thing applies if I'm over here or if I'm over here. So if I'm playing, get more of that speaker, more of that one, I'll go back here, projecting more. So the idea is that I'm going to walk around a bit while I'm doing this. So that's what I'm up to. So let's go back to the amp itself then. So we're on the front cover of the amp there. Okay. So gain. What about gain? So if we put all the gain basically, does it make it sound any better? If we undo the gain, we get that. Nothing. So start around about 50% gain. This is metal. I'm not going to start doing every little cent above and below, but if it sounds good at 50, a bit too clean for me there. Let's go up a bit. There's going to be a point where we increase it. It doesn't make any difference. Still feeling a bit more there. A bit more gain. Hey. Okay, still a bit of detail there. Something I used to do actually is when I do this sort of thing, making a tone, I play a bit of fade to black. This is tuned into D standard below, but that's a clean riff from Metallica. But if you play it on an amplifier, a clean riff through it, and it still sounds good separation wise, it's a sign that, you know, it's going to sound pretty good when you're doing your long arpeggiated chords. So here we go. That's telling me there's too much gain. It's a bit too heavy there. Let's go back a bit. Got the bum notes there. Apologise, not played that for a while. Oh, the pressure. Right, so gain. You might hear on my videos. I do a lot of this. Really low, because I want to hear what it sounds like when I do these palm mutes and they bloom. So you hear at the end of, if it went like the noise gate was too high, I wouldn't like that. So that's it. I know you see a lot of people in guitar shops do this shruggy thing on an R8 and a 9-string. So whilst I'm not on camera, I'm playing stuff I enjoy and have fun, like ZZ Top, The Darkness, Metallica, Gary Moore. But when it comes to camera, I kind of clamp down a bit and I feel ooh, the pressure. But I'm doing these things to get the sound I want, so it allows me to get in to that creative zone. So right, next thing I'm going to do is mess around with the master. So the JCM 800 doesn't have a what's the word for it? A channel and a master. It just has the master. So the JCM 800, when you crank it, that is when you get a good tone out of it. So we go back. Sounds pants. Let's crank it a bit. Right, and I can see my interface is cropping a bit there now. So you can hear that fuzz. So what I'm going to do is turn the patch level down. So I can either turn my interface level down or turn this patch level down. So I'm going to turn the amp level down and see if that fixes it. So I've knocked it down a few cents. Definitely better. We've still got a bit more. So I don't want to turn my interface down to absolute nil gain, basically. I want to get a bit out of it. So it was initially on 25 or something. So let's go back to like 39. Let's make sure it's gone. their normal playing. It's gone, the distortion's gone. I'm going to do some palm mutes occasionally, it's there. Not intelligible, you can't hear it. Let's keep tweaking with that until we get rid of it, because we want a decent signal chain. So I've got no more distortion, so I'm going to knock it up as much as I can get away with. I'm going to go to 33. I know this is a bit anal messing around with this. Go to 33 to get one more notch out of that and see if it stops distorting, and then we can move on. So distortion. Good. We've increased the master volume, we've put a bit more gain in it, and we've made sure our levels are fine. And in my last video, this whole signal chain piece is really important. It's not just select a preset and make sure it goes. So your output of your Tone Master Pro, your input levels to your audio interface, and then into whatever comes next. Been a while since I've put my fingers on that one. Right, okay, let's start making some tone. Brilliant, next section. Let's get into treble. So, treble, obviously, is going to be some high stuff. So, if you play as your guitarist, you might want to tweak this on your amp on the go. But what I'm going to do is kind of just see, we'll do this. Most people do this. That's terrific. 50s again is going to be a good spot. That's obviously too muffly. Starting to sound good. Around here is sounding good. So that's starting to sound alright. That's like that. Quite a bit of treble, but what if it's too high? What we'll do is we'll be able to knock some of the presence back later on. So keeping an eye on the levels on the interface here too. So mids, it's the same thing. The mids sounds like this. Way too much for me. Down here is a bit way too low. Loads of bass, and it's just you have to crank it to ungodly levels to hear what's going on with it. So let's go back to the middle point, see how that sounds. Still doesn't seem like enough to me. Let's do a bit more. Up here somewhere. Let's knock it back. I think somewhere around here. Okay, just to be clear as well, guys, so whilst I'm doing this all on the screen, for the sake of this video, we can actually do that on here. So if I go to the amp on screen here, yeah, so I've got the amp here, so I can adjust the, what are we on now? We're on middles. So if I go to my amp selection stuff here, apologies if you can't see that, but I've got middle, you can see I'm controlling that here, so in there somewhere. Let's go back to the middle again then. The treble, sorry. That's not right there because we were just in the middle, we'll have to keep tweaking a bit. Yeah, sounds good. Back a bit. I need a bit more of something. I think the presence is going to be the one, so it's good. Right, so bass is a bit too heavy for me, so bass wise, let's do the same sort of thing. Let's go back to the Tone Master Pro and I'll just chug something out and just twist the knob. This is a lot easier with this. So there's 2 but way too thin. Let's see what Max sounds like on a JC800. Sounds probably a bit too much bass for me. It's fun, but it's not good. It's not good in the mix. So pull down here, wait till it all. Because I'm in a low tune and this isn't G standard below. Too much there. From here. Really nice, balanced, pleasant tone now, but I'm going to knock it up a bit. I don't want to cut too much out. Okay, right, presence. Let's go on to that. So when I'm playing these, it off. Loses its sparkle. Really forward, a bit too much forward on the top end. And again, this little chord, this stabbing chord for me does it. A bit too much bass again. Okay, so I think we're there. For me to start messing about with though. Okay, right, so we've done as much as I think I want to do on the amp. Let's save it just to make sure we've got the tone. Yeah, fine. Right, so this is going to be a bit of a bonus section, but if you don't do this in the room with your kit anyway, you are missing a trick. There's only so much that this amplifier can do. So we've got a stomp box, we've boosted it, we've cut the noise, we've chosen the mic, got the speaker cab dialed in, but you've got treble, middle, bass presence. It's not very allowing of you to change the EQ curves of what's going on there. So we've got what we've got. You can either put an EQ before or after, but I'm going to put it afterwards because it's kind of what I'm used to doing in the box. So I'm going to introduce you to some of Tone Master Pro's EQs. So I'll start with something that you might be familiar with. So when I used to watch bands and pubs and stuff, and they were playing stuff like Van Halen, or they're playing Slash's stuff, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, all that kind of stuff. Everyone was using these. Dimebag Darrell, for example. I bought an MXR, I think it was a 7 or 8 or 10 band EQ, had a few of them. And the MXR series, really good bits of kit. So I've got this in here, and if I put, then change something like that, if this clips the meters temporarily, I'll sort it after. So, let's go down. Any big changes? Okay, same with, we might want to give it a bit more sparkle. Back. So the reason to doing this is because the amp can only use so much. So what I'm going to do is use something more familiar to me, because I use, let's just quickly bypass that so you can hear the change. It's normal. I'll do is replace this with something I'm familiar with. So I use the Tone Master Pro and record it into my interface into Studio One. So I'm going to use a 5-band parametric here. So please don't be intimidated or scared by this type of thing if you've never seen it before. It looks like a pedal and it does behave like it. It's just an EQ. So what we've got are 5 different bands here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each one of them has its own frequency, its own amount of gain. So when I lift it up or down, it does its thing. Fine. And the Q is the amount of tightness on the curve there. You go to each one, you can turn them on and off individually. The first one will be a low cut, so what do you want to get rid of? The low end you don't need. Same for the top, and you can sweep that back and forward to wherever you want. It's pretty straightforward stuff, and the rest are peaks and troughs as to whatever one you need. So, okay, I'll remove that, put it back in again, start it at 0, and then let's get into EQ. So EQ is going to make a really big difference to this tone. If you haven't done this and you're wondering why don't your tones sound like other people or whatever, if you're trying to copy people, fine. But if you're not in the ballpark of what sounds good to you, excuse me, then the EQ might be the trick. So the electric guitar, despite this being in G standard, is not a bass instrument. It does cover some lower frequencies, but you don't want it to necessarily stomp on the bass toes, stomp on the bass's toes, should I say. I'm a big fan for low end, but I think that's just too much. We don't want 45 hertz being the cutoff there. So I normally put that around 70 or 80 or something like that. A lot of people go a lot higher, like to 100, but with lower tunes, you want to hear what some of the fundamentals are. So I'm going to put it about 70, okay? So, and the kind of key to this is that when you do it, if it doesn't sound like you're taking anything away apart from adding clarity, then that's a good thing. If it's too tight, if it's too high up or too high cut, then you're gonna take away something. Bypass there. Listen to the low end specifically. Bit more clarity there, which is really good. Okay, top end. I want to scoop off some of that. These are normally set really high, 12 kilohertz. That's like cymbal territory. You might hear some remnants of pick attack or whatever, but I normally go for about 7.5-ish. For me, and then that just gets rid of any unwanted crispy distortion, aliasing, or anything you get in the digital realm. So with the low cut, I don't want that doing too much, or too steep, should I say, and that's what we look at, is this decibel per octave value. So we can change that so it becomes steeper or less steep. I'll have it about there, 12, so it's not too steep and it sounds natural. However, the top that we're cutting off, I've set that 7.5 kilohertz. I'm going to make that quite steep because I don't want it affecting the sheen and the top end and the treble. And look, because you see the curve there is quite relaxed. If I knock it back, it affects quite a lot, all the way back to like 4.5. So I want this quite steep to just literally cut off a lot of what I don't want. So I'm doing that around about there. I would say 12 will do it. So I can play that and then cut it up and see what we're missing. Further up, or if we can tighten this up, I will. So here we go. Right, so it's cutting a bit too far. I can hear it encroaching on some other frequencies. Cool. Right, so this is going to be the best cut that you make. So it's your low mids, your mud. You might hear when you are making a mix or a track or something, you end up EQing the mix or EQing the track in the DAW. So your Pro Tools, your Studio One, your Logic, whatever. Do it in your amp what you can, but you want, for me, pickups all the way open, always in the bridge. I want all the tone coming through, live setting and doing all the verses. Fine, you're going to have some tonal or artistic license there, but when you come to recording studio quality stuff, you want to get the best you can out of it. So all the signal, unrelenting power for the metal. So listen to this change that this is going to make. So 200, it's only about 240, 250 is where I start to feel there's a problem. So if I just show you some of that. Obviously horrendous, just to overemphasize. So sounds a bit, let's turn her off. This is how it was. Quite muddy, quite nasal, so I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna pull some of that away. So that's 4 decibels, you can see there. So I'm gonna be a bit more specific about it. Tighten the Q just a smidgen. You see this Q value here? This is what's going to tighten up how tight the notch is. So I don't want it like a surgical cut. I just want it to not affect everything. So again. Take this one out. Okay, back to how we were. So I think I need a more severe cut. Let's do that. Let's go down there. There we go. Let's turn that off. So I'm just going to do that riff again, our little master riff. Let's push back in. Okay, I like that. I didn't mess around with the frequency too much. I just pulled it to where I wanted. I like the sound of that already. But you're taking some of the low end out. It's wise to put some high end back in. So I'm going to do a bit of a nudge around 1-ish. See how that sounds. So when I want to play something that normally has a bit of mid in it. Turn that band off. Okay, so that sounds pretty good already. I think I'm just going to lower it down. 2.5 is probably a bit too much. Let's go for about 1 dB. I think should do it. Okay. Take the EQ off then. Back to how we were at the start. Okay, this is without the EQ. Open chord thing on our riff. EQ back in. Okay, I'm going to open that Q a little bit wider and I'm going to pull it a little lower down. I feel we're missing some of the goodness around there. I'm going to go down there. I knocked about 100 hertz off it. Okay, right, that is our tone. So that's the end of what we're going to do. So I'm going to turn all this stuff off, all of it off, and then we're going to go back to what it was, just plain bass tone. And then they'll add it all in, and then we'll just summarise at the end. Okay, right, so this is the tone that we started off with. Okay, noise get back in. That's not going to add any tonal difference, but gets rid of some noise, wise to have in. Okay, back to those riffs again. Okay, finally let's add the EQ back in and see where we are. So EQ, oh sorry, it wasn't. No, it's bypasser, that was just the one band. Okay, so EQ in now, let's do that. And here we go. Okay, right, thanks for watching, guys. So that's making a heavy metal stroke rock preset on the Tone Master Pro. Hope you liked it. Hope all this information was useful. I've got into a fair bit of detail on these bits. Again, not trying to overcomplicate it, but, you know, once you've set a preset, you're bound to spend a lot of time with it, so it's kind of good to get it right. But the important thing is when you're making a tone, don't mess around with the amp too much. There's only so much you can do. Get the speaker and microphone positioning correct, but also on that, make sure you get the right cabinet. Okay, make sure you're selecting the right cabinet for the sound that you want. They've all got their own characters and stuff to a degree. Make sure you sort that out. Okay, so let's do it. Quick save it again. Right, okay, brilliant. Thank you, guys. Look to the other video I've just done before this one, which is about getting the gain structure and recording right, and this will hopefully naturally lead you back to this one again. So there'll be more coming on lead tones and on clean tones and crunchy tones and all that good stuff. So, you know, it's been great. We'll see you next time.